Hi, everybody. This is Kevin Horgan from the ANC 5D's Zoning and Development Committee. It is Thursday, February 16th. This is the ANC's Zoning Development Committee meeting. Hope everybody's doing well. As always, the objective of this meeting is to allow BZA Zoning Commission applicants more time than they might otherwise get at the full ANC meetings. You can kind of go into more detail. These meetings typically last about an hour and a half. We've got 3 presentations, so I'd say you don't have to take up all that time. We want to go home early. But each of you, if you need to speak for up to half an hour, I think that would be fine. And for tonight on the agenda, there are 3 cases. Let me see if I can share my screen. This never works. Anyway, I'm going to share my screen here. So we've got 3 items on the agenda tonight. We've got a BZA case, which has got a hearing. I've moved them up front because their BZA hearing, I think, is pretty soon. The end of March. It is BZA case 20853. That's 1212 Oak Street Northeast. And then I wasn't sure. We can switch these around here. If someone from the Union Market can tell me, when is your hearing for this scheduled?
We don't have a hearing date scheduled yet. Okay.
All right. Well, in that case, I'll keep you here in the agenda, just trying to be fair in terms of who's ever got stuff coming up first. Second on the agenda will be a BZA case 1400 Montello Ave Northeast. That's 20855. And then we have a Union Market second stage PUD. So, is there somebody here who wants to speak up on behalf and give your presentation? I can promote you as a co-host. That way you can, let me stop this share here. I can promote you to a co-host. That way you can share your screen. I think that should work. Whoever wants to present on behalf of 1212 Oak Street Northeast.
Yes, of course. Hey guys, I'm John Oliver with Holland and Knight. I will give the presentation for 1212 Oak Street. I'm happy to share my screen.
Great.
Let me jump to PowerPoint. Can we all see my screen now?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, again, hi, hello. My name is John Oliver, law firm of Holland and Knight. Here talking about BZA case number 20853. Also joined with me this evening are a few members of 1212 Oak Street LLC. So what I have set up for us this evening is a brief PowerPoint presentation. First thing I'll kind of show us where the property is located. Then I'll talk about the requested relief, and then I'll explain how and why we meet the standard of review that the Board of Zoning Adjustment will consider when we go in front of them on March 29th. So here on this slide, this is just kind of make sure that we all know where the property is located. The property address is 1212 Oak Street Northeast. Property is located east of the northeast corner of Montello Avenue and Oak Street Northeast. And again, the property is located within ANC 5D. The SMD is 504. Left-hand side here, we just see just a broad view of where the property is located. On the bottom right-hand side of the screen, we can just see the property's zoning map. The property is currently zoned RF1. So now, just as an overview of what the application is, it's a request for special exception relief from the rooftop architectural element construction constraints of 11E 206.1, which will then approve an as-built porch roof located at 1212 Oak Street Northeast. Again, as you've heard, we're going in front of the Board of Zoning Adjustment on March 29th of next month. So, just the text from the zoning ordinance, so we all kind of understand it. If there's questions from it, happy to expand upon it. But in brief, 11E 206.1 states a rooftop architectural element original to a principal building, such as a porch roof, cannot be removed, altered, shifted, can't change its location, can't change its shape, increase its height or size. But then E 206.4 says relief from 206.1 can be granted by the board as a special exception pursuant to X 901.2 and subject to the conditions of E 5207.1. So now I'll walk us through how we meet those conditions and how we meet X 901.2. So again, it's kind of looking at E 5207.1 subsection A. It states that the proposed construction shall not have a substantially adverse effect on the use or enjoyment of any abutting or adjacent dwelling or property. And then it jumps down to 3 different conditions you have to show. You know, the first one here is that the light and air available to the neighboring properties will not be unduly affected. Now, again, as I mentioned, we're here talking about an as-built constructed porch roof, which the porch roof that we see now was constructed 18 inches higher than the original porch roof. An 18-inch increase is not capable of impacting its neighbors. It's a de minimis increase. Again, we're talking about 18 inches here with this request. And you jump to subsection 2. It asks you to show that the privacy of use and enjoyment of neighboring properties will not be unduly compromised. Again, as we've talked about, an 18-inch increase in a porch roof height is not capable of compromising the privacy of use and the enjoyment of a neighboring property. Finally, the third prong here, the proposed construction as viewed from the street, alley, other public way shall not substantially visually intrude upon the character, scale, and pattern of the houses along the street. We have some pictures that we'll show later on in this presentation, but the as-built porch roof does not visually intrude upon the character and scale, and the housing along Oak Street, because the porch roofs along Oak Street also vary in height and size and in shape. Again, when you're looking at 5207.1 subsection B says it wants you to show compliance with paragraph A by submitting drawings, photos, section drawings to the Board of Zoning Adjustment. I'll show you on our next slide what we plan to submit into the case record with our pre-hearing statement. So here on this slide, let me zoom in real quick. In the center, we can see the as-built constructed building. On the left-hand side, we can see the adjacent property. Right-hand side, we can see the adjacent property as well. What we're talking about is this very light gray 18-inch increase in the porch roof. Here, if we can see my cursor as I scroll through, this is where the porch roof is located. Again, just next to the property on the right-hand side, just above the property on the left-hand side. So this photo shows compliance with paragraph B. Again, as I mentioned, that the porch roofs along Oak Street vary in height. This is what I'm talking about. Here on the left-hand side, you can see 1212 Oak Street. It's where the porch roof is located. Porch roofs increase in height as we kind of go east on the street. Again, here in this slide, let me zoom out. In this slide, you can just see again, same thing that we're talking about. Porch roofs vary in height. Therefore, this different porch roof in height is not going to stand out because the porch roofs along Oak Street are not a uniform, consistent height. So that is how we meet the conditions of 5207.1. Now, if we jump to X 901.2, which is the general special exception criteria, the first prong is that the board has to consider whether or not the use is in harmony with the general purpose and the intent of the zoning regulations. Here, the proposed development is consistent with the intent of its zoning district, which again is RF1, which the intent of the RF1 zone district is to provide for areas developed with row houses on small lots within no more than 2 dwelling units are permitted. This lot is roughly 1,200 square feet in size. The building that we've shown is going to have 2 dwelling units. Therefore, it conforms, it adheres, it meets the intention of the RF1 zone district. Also, one thing to note, if you look at the metrics and the tangible development standards for the RF1 zone district, we're not seeking relief from those. We're only seeking relief from this nuanced rooftop architectural element request. So again, kind of second and third prong here, X 901.2, have to show that the use will not tend to affect adversely the use of neighboring properties in accordance with the zoning regulations and zoning maps. As we've talked about, the porch roof, the proposed development will not adversely affect the use of neighboring properties. The development is similar in size and scale with the buildings along Oak Street. And again, the mere 18-inch increase in porch roof is not going to be noticeable to the untrained eye, as that we've seen porch roofs along Oak Street vary in size and in height. And then third prong, the zoning ordinance requires you to adhere to any other special conditions that may be required. That was 5207.1. I've already walked us through that. So again, just to conclude this evening, we're here seeking support for BZA case number 20853, which is a request for special exception relief from the rooftop architectural element construction constraints of E206.1 to approve an as-built porch roof at 1212 Oak Street because the 18-inch increase will not unduly affect neighboring properties. The proposed construction is substantially similar to other porch roofs in the neighborhood, and the proposed development is consistent with the general purpose and intent of the zoning regulations and zoning maps. So that concludes my long-winded presentation. Happy to answer any questions that this body might have.
Thank you, John. I have a few questions. What I might do is share my screen here.
Yeah, of course. Let me stop sharing.
And I'm going to share an image from Google Street View. Let me know if you're seeing that.
I'm seeing a white screen right now.
Let's try that again. All right. Share. Oh, that was I'm showing a whiteboard. That's not what I intended. All right, try this. How's that?
Much better.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so this is your applicant's property here. And take a look. And by the way, I should have mentioned at the start of the meeting, unlike a lot of ANC zoning committees in the city, we don't vote in this meeting. So if you see us, and actually I don't think there's any commissioners in tonight's meetings. If you feel that we're like asking you any pointed, difficult questions, well, we're not the people who are going to vote on this anyway. The goal again for this committee is the ANC likes us to give you a lot of time. We can ask some questions that are going to help educate, because the ANC commissioners will then review this from the YouTube page after the fact. That way they'll often review these before when you present, because most likely they're going to have you present at, I don't set the ANC's agenda, but you have a hearing at the end of March, they're going to invite you to come present at the ANC meeting in March. And they like having this video because they'll review this, it'll give them some questions, prepare them ahead of your presentation to the ANC in the March meeting. But anyways, I see what you guys did here, and it took us a while to understand what had happened. So it seems like typically when people do pop-ups, they underpin, they go down, but in this instance, your client shifted every single, looks like you shifted up the layers of the first floor and the second floor because all the windows and doors don't align. The porch is actually now here. And because of that, that's what seems like it had driven you to increase the height of the porch. Although it does seem like there's at least a foot of clearance above the window here that you could have kept this lower. And I can see the initial, I'm zooming in here. You can see this brick pattern here that used to be going down the block, that used to be the top where the window lintel was. So is that what the client did? They basically, instead of underpinning and going down, they basically just they went up?
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for that question. First and foremost, just want to make sure that we're focused in on what relief we're seeking, right? We're talking about the increased porch roof height. Again, we're happy to talk about the project. We just kind of want to square us and make sure that that's kept in mind. I kind of want to turn it over to Chico Horton from 1212 Oats LLC. Just kind of explain how the project came to be located such as it is right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. Good evening. I want to say my name is Chico Horton. I am a member of a member that owns 1212 Oats LLC. And Kevin, your question is a good one. So correct, we poured a slab in place. Basically, we were going to go down, and our geotech report showed that we had just call it approximately 2 feet, maybe a little bit less, of room on part of the footing. And make a long story short, when we went to take out the old slab and we looked at the footing, we noticed that the footing was uneven in different parts of the old structure. So it was either a decision to underpin, or we just had to go back and re-pour the slab, put a new footing and re-pour the slab. And that's what we did.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation.
No problem.
I will say, you said it doesn't adversely affect, I don't think, I'm not sure the neighbors will complain, but the objective of the zoning regulations was to maintain these kind of architectural elements. We're not as protected as Capitol Hill, but, if I just walk down the block here.
If I can I interject on that one? So
Sure.
If you go on the corners, like if you go back, that will be rebuilt and put back to make it look consistent with the other houses.
Which one?
Right there. So you were just going on the roof line right there, not right there, not on the porch, right above it.
The slope cornice above, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, that will be put back, and that was always permitted to be done. We just had not gotten there yet.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so this will be restored.
Yes, yeah, will be restored. It will look pretty. The symmetry will look good right there with the neighbors.
Okay, great. And
Yep.
so, and just this one here.
That's
And-
it. Correct.
And was there a technical challenge that presented? I mean, is there did you need to have the roof? And I asked this question because actually this evening before I actually came out and I stood on the sidewalk and I looked up here and I was just looking at the project, and it seemed like I understand why you did it, but I mean, for the sake of having to go get zoning relief, I mean, because you can see down here, like there are some roofs that might be, 3 inches, 6 inches. If I just do a virtual walk down the block here,
It sends a hill, Kevin. I've walked on that stretch. That's why they adjust upward as they go. They're
Yeah.
ascending a hill slightly.
yeah, and that's to be, but for the most part, they're all. I can see a little jog here. What was it? Was there a technical reason why? Did you have to, like, even just looking for this view here? Seems you just could have kept a slightly lower roof and avoided all of this zoning issue.
That's a good question, Kevin.
No, Chico, please go ahead.
No, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
No, please, Chico. It's all you.
Yeah. So no, Kevin, that's a good question. And in hindsight, that would have been the direction that probably might have been done. But I just thought symmetry wise that the raising the porch roof, even a small amount, looked better. Obviously, I didn't know that it would cause this much fuss, or you're right, I probably wouldn't have done that. So it was just basically not being aware of the rules in this case.
And then Kevin, there's just one thing I'd like to add on that note, and Chico, if you want to expand, please do so. But when we were talking about this case and we came on board a few weeks ago, Chico mentioned that when they were working on the project, that the existing porch roof was in terrible shape. It needed to be redone. It was in a state of disrepair. It wasn't worth being there as it is. So then, again, we see it rebuilt. We see the height increase based off of what we're talking about with, the slabs being poured and now with it being located there.
And
Oh, yeah.
but
Oh,
there is
I
a section
have-
of zoning that discusses repair, and raising it is a different thing. And while they do vary as you go down the street, they vary absolute to each other in absolute height, not relative to the buildings. To the buildings, they're all consistent at 10 feet from the bottom of the floor to the top of the floor of the porch to the top of the roof is 10 feet on all of them. Now it's 11'6" on this one, which, while is a small amount, as you stated, sort of. I mean, it's small compared to 100 feet. compared to 10, it's 15% increase. It's quite a bit taller.
And I might add that it is, you can look at it very visually there. It's higher than either side, which breaks the alignment going up the street. What they did is as it went up the hill, each porch roof went up ever so slightly, but the entire house went up. So as it ascended the hill, you had a few inches difference between each house, but they were all the same size, rising up with slight differences in the roof because they were ascending a hill, which you see all over the city. But that breaks the alignment of the floors and the roofs.
Yeah, I have to agree with, with Skip there. Like, I'm not sure how the ANC commissioners are going to feel. I don't think this is something people want to see repeated, because it's not just, it's the entire facade. And I understand the zoning regulation only allow us to judge this through the lens of this one element here. But it seemed that there was, by not doing underpinning, and I understand underpinning is expensive, by not doing that, this whole situation got created. Pardon me, when I'm doing a screen share, I can't find the mute button. Please stop.
Can I ask how did we get here? Shouldn't this have been picked up as part of zoning review during your building permit approval?
Chico, can we have you address that question, please?
Yeah. So, Mr. Morrison, you're asking how did it get caught up at this stage? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Usually it's not already built when we're looking at it because it's a zoning. You're asking for zoning relief, and
right.
Approved zoning is part of getting your building permit. So how did we end up here where you already built and now you're looking for the relief?
Well, right, because as I was saying earlier, that when I built it back, I didn't know that I couldn't add additional height to it. So that's basically how we were here.
Oh, so the increase in the porch height wasn't part of your original building permit documents.
Correct.
This is
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, very, very quickly, we're happy to talk about that, but I do just kind of want to keep in mind that the zoning ordinance, the zoning regulations contemplate mistakes. There's a reason we have the Board of Zoning Adjustment. The ordinance spells out how you can amend, how you can fix, so you can bring your structure in compliance with the zoning ordinance. And that's exactly why we're here this evening. So I hear the conversation about, the overall totality of the structure. Kevin, that's a great point. We just kind of want to bring us back to those very specific requirements of 5207.1. Happy to expand upon that. Happy to show how the increase is not going to have the adverse impact as far as the use of neighboring properties, and how the size is not going to be adversely impacting the adjacent property owners.
Yeah.
No, and I think we've sort of discussed those points because we sort of disagree with what you're saying, where we do think it is different than the consistency of the height is broken within the neighborhood. I hear what you're saying, but I don't know that we necessarily agree with it.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. And I'll say we are being, we're trying to be very laser focused on the zoning regulations. I did notice today in the case record, the neighbor, I believe, who lives in this building, 1210 Oak Street, has filed for party status in opposition. I'm here pointing at something that I'm not showing my screen anymore, but the neighbor who lives adjacent to this property along the alley, he has filed party status in opposition, and he's listed a whole boatload of building code. And I always tell people building code is building code. And I'm quite sure, from what he put in his thing, there's been some flooding and some damage to his home. I assume you will figure that out, and that's a building code issue. But we are focused on just the zoning here. And I would personally say, I would not want to see this approach. And I'm sure there was some good savings on not underpinning, but, we don't want to see this, this type of approach. I think it'll probably look a lot better once you've got that cornice installed.
Yeah, I agree.
And, I think it would be interesting, I think, if between now and you present at the ANC, is there a version of a roof that could, like, how could you make it, is there a way to mask this without going to too much expense to not, I'm sure if you would change the roof height 3 inches, no one would have said anything. Right now, it is very noticeable. Like, is there a way to adjust this, to fix this after the fact? I think it would be helpful to go to the ANC and say, hey, for us to do this, this would be the implication to the building. Like, obviously, you can't make the roof has to at least be over, I personally, style wise, I like it when you can see some brick above the, framing around the doors and windows. But one of my friends down the road here, when he built his porch roof, because he was trying to get a certain slope, he right above the steel lintel, his porch, his beadboard starts. So if you had done something similar, like, would that have helped the roof, that architectural element? How much lower could you, if you were to undergo, fixes, how much lower would that look if you had a rendering and then go to the ANC and say, hey, this is how much it's going to cost to fix this? Like, if that's the burden, right? That's when you go to the BZA, you're asking, saying, hey, there's an unreasonable burden. I forget the language they use, how they describe it.
Right.
But that's really what it comes down to. You can probably lower this at a cost, and what you're asking for is zoning relief to avoid that cost. It would be helpful for the ANC to understand that when you come to them, they meet the second Monday of each month. Our ANC recently changed their monthly meetings, so there's a second Monday of each month. What date is that?
It was this past Monday.
Yeah. For the March meeting. So
it would be
March 13.
Yeah.
So obviously your hearing is at the end of March. You're going to want to present to the ANC on March 13. And I think it would be helpful if they understood what that is. So
Kevin, thanks for that. Just want to unpack one comment that you had in there. You started talking about the undue hardship or burden that starts to wade into the standard of review for a variance. That's a heightened standard of review. It's not what we're seeking. We're seeking special exception. Just want to make that known again. I think this body all sees that, but we're happy to again talk offline, Chico and I, and figure out what we can show the ANC in these next 3-4 weeks, if that's a budget, if that's a what the cost would be, again, to come back and rectify this problem, then we'd come up with that. If you're asking for kind of a rendering of what the property would look like if the cornice was built, I think we'd be happy to give that. Again, we're happy to comply. We're happy to appease this body and then appease the greater ANC. Just kind of want to clarify what that ask is.
Do you have a schedule for the restoration of the cornice? Like, I noticed there was a stop work sticker on the building when I walked in front of it today. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but do you have a rough idea for when that cornice will be restored?
Yeah, I'm waiting on pretty much stop work order deals with the zoning. So as soon as I get through the BZA and there's some direction from them one way or the other, then they'll allow me to do the cornice. That's the only holdup.
Okay.
Well, as Kevin said, one thing I would definitely do is none of your drawings that we have seen tonight actually show the cornice put back in place. So that should really be in your drawings if that's what you intend to do.
The elevation shows it there.
I did. I missed
the line drawn elevation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll try to keep us on schedule here. Unless Mr. Horton or Mr. Oliver, if you have any other comments, I want to move on to the next group here.
No, of course. Yeah, we don't have any more comments. Chico, if you don't have any comments, I just want to say thanks for the time this evening.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on the agenda is BZA case 20885, 1400 Montello Ave Northeast. All right, who would like to be made a co-host for the purposes of presentation?
Hi, Kevin, this is Marty Sullivan. Warren will be the co-host. I'll speak a little bit, but Warren's going to do the presentation.
Okay, I'll defer to you with the exceptions and all of that. I can maybe just give them a.
Yeah, I can introduce. Sure, I can introduce all the relief and then have you show the plans. So
Okay.
And Warren, I promoted you to a co-host, so you should now have the ability to share your screen if you want to do that.
Okay, let's see here. Share screen.
okay, I'll start. I'll introduce the application then. So also with us here is Christian Creech, the property owner and resident of the building. I believe Christian's here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time tonight. This is Christian.
Actually, Christian, if you could just take a couple minutes and explain your history with this property.
Sure, absolutely. I bought this property back in June of 2011. And it was an old abandoned store that needed a full restoration. I completed the restoration in 2013 and moved in. I've been living there ever since, probably around August of 2013. And it's been an owner occupied residence ever since. Right next
Thanks,
door
Chris.
to me, just really
No,
quick,
go ahead.
right next door to me on the right, have been my neighbors since I've been here. They're the Huntleys. I have been keeping Jamina Huntley, who owns the property, up to date on my plans for the upcoming project. She's a little bit elderly, so I've also communicated with her sister Yvonne and her son Jermaine.
Okay, thanks, Christian. So Christian's proposing an addition here, an upper level addition, and also a big part of this. Well, it's not a big part of the project, but it's a big part in triggering a lot of the areas of necessary relief. Is he's connecting the existing accessory building to the house itself. So he's making the accessory building larger, and where there's a separation right now.
A visual would help, sir.
Yeah, I know. Warren, do you have a
Yeah, I can show here the plan. This is the
The
existing.
accessory is the garage, I'm assuming?
yes.
So this is the existing conditions as it is now in the floor plan. And the proposal is to bump the accessory up against the back of the house. So you can see in this footprint.
Yeah, and we'll be keeping the existing footprint of the garage will stay at the same place where it is now off of the alley. It's 2 feet off of the alley. And so that footprint is the line where it's going to be. So here's the areas of relief. What the connection will do, it'll cause lot occupancy to go from 56% to 70% just on that lowest level. The second, third, and fourth levels, which are technically the first, second, and third stories, will be much lower than 60%. What's the lot occupancy of the top levels, Warren?
38% on the top level. The second floor is 40, and the first floor is 45.
Yeah, so we're asking for 70%, but it's just for that lower level. The other thing that connection triggers is a need for rear yard relief, because now it's one building, and instead of a 20-foot rear yard, there's actually a 2-foot rear yard because of that connection. 10-foot rule is triggered. So we're asking for relief from the 10-foot rule because we're adjoining a building. And now because of that connection on the lowest level, we're now 39 feet past that level. But again, we're not doing the whole addition. It's just that connection on that lowest level that triggers the 10-foot rule with the building to the north, the adjoining building. The other areas of relief, closed court. So you see that notch in the top there. It wasn't a court before. We're creating a court now. And also because we're asking to go to 3 units, there's a minimum court requirement. There isn't for 1 or 2 units, but there is for 3. I mean, it could be called a court in each and not need relief, but out of an abundance of caution, we wanted to make sure we included the court relief because we created that court and actually, building up on that a little bit.
This may sound like a weird question.
Yeah.
What happens if your next door neighbor, probably not the current owner, I grant you, but the next door neighbor decides to extend the building, a future owner decides to extend their building?
Well, I guess you'd have a little, you would have.
Oh, you mean in the area of the
I'm
court?
thinking about this court thing that's being talked about. If that building extended even halfway down the back part of that lot, it would seal across that so-called court.
Yeah, I don't know that we have any windows or anything there, do we, Warren?
No,
So what is its purpose?
Well, you can see it's existing. This is the existing condition.
Oh, I see the notch there. So, okay, so you're
Right.
connecting, gotcha.
So then, yeah, by adding this to the
Okay,
back, this creates it. So in other words, we're not moving this wall back to the property line.
gotcha. That's what I was trying to figure that out. Okay.
Okay, so one other area of relief is a conversion. We're asking for a U320 conversion to 3 units under the 900-foot rule, which is a special exception. This lot is 2970 square feet. So we meet that the 900-foot rule. So we're asking for a 3rd unit. The final area of relief is an odd one. It's relief from an alley centerline setback requirement. Now, there's 2 different kinds of alley centerline setback requirements. There's one for accessory buildings, and that requirement was recently reduced from 12 feet down to 7.5 feet. We have a 16-foot wide alley, so we would have met that if this was an accessory building because it's a shorter requirement. But there's a separate requirement that says if you have a building with a parking space, or if you have parking inside a building, whether it's accessory or principal building, the entrance to that building has to be at least 10 feet high. I don't know why they wrote that. And it has to be 12 feet from the center line of the alley. When they reduced the center line setback from 12 to 7.5, they forgot to include this section, I think. But at any rate, and this is in the parking regulations. So C 711.11 requires 12 feet from the center line of the adjacent alley. Because we're building on the existing footprint, which is just 2 feet off the property line, we'll be 2 feet short of that requirement. But because we're on the end and because our alley's 16 feet, we think that shouldn't be an issue for getting in and out of the garage. And so we're asking for relief from that as well. That would be all the areas of relief. I know it sounds like a lot of relief because it's 6 areas of relief, but essentially it's almost all, except for the conversion, it's almost all triggered by just the work on the lower level to connect these 2 buildings. Warren, do you have the other?
Yeah, I'll show
Plans you
everybody
wanna
the rest of the project here. These are just briefly existing. That's the existing 1st floor plan, existing 2nd floor. So this is the proposed cellar or basement level. As Marty mentioned, it's going to be, we would like to convert it to 3 different units. First unit is here in the basement. It's a 2-bedroom unit. And then here you can see the garage is located and is abutted right up against the lower level of the house.
So this, excuse me 1 second, does the house just go down a grade? If
It
the garage-
does.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Towards the alley, it drops actually quite a bit, almost like an entire floor.
That explains why they had the steps. Okay.
Yeah, you have the steps down for the entry into the lower level unit.
Okay.
There. And then there's
Warren,
egress windows.
I'm sorry, Warren, do you think, would it be possible to show a street view? I mean, I might be able to share it from my phone. I was traveling, so but I don't know if that might be helpful to see a Google Street View.
Kevin, are you able to do that?
Well, I can try if I can share my
There we
screen.
go.
Oh,
Oh, I can
Yes.
see the distance difference already. Or I should
If-
say
if
the
you,
elevation
yep.
changed. Okay.
There you go.
So the
yeah.
cell-
So actually, all the addition is technically, it's cellar space. It's below, and then there's 3 stories above that.
Oops. Didn't mean to go in the, I didn't realize Google Street View brought us into the alley.
Oh, it certainly does for a fair number of them in the city.
I love it. I love it when they do that. It's so much more helpful.
There was a view, I think, right here that might have given a good context of even set down right here. Oops. Okay,
There's a
Want me to
big
stop?
building restriction line here. That's why there's a lot of open space on the lot that, it can't be built out towards the street.
I do it on the street here. Okay, good. There's the garage roof there, kind of sloping. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll let you resume your presentation.
Okay,
Thank you.
how do I, is everybody see it or?
We see you right now,
You have to
Okay.
reshare it. I interrupted your share.
All right,
so we can see the elevation stuff.
okay. Share. Okay, so as I mentioned, this would be the lower level unit with the garage at that same level. Moving up, we have a second unit at the ground level, which is actually going to be 2 stories. The second unit will be the ground floor and the second floor. And then we're also proposing a deck on top of the garage. I have a 3-dimensional drawing here, which will be helpful coming up. This is the upper level of the second unit, which will have 3 bedrooms, all with ensuite bathrooms. And then the upper level is a 1-bedroom unit. And then there'll be a stair to a roof deck on the top of the 3rd floor. That's the existing elevation. And this is from Montello Avenue.
That's where the store was, that corner thing, right?
Right here, yes. That was the-
Okay, that door there is what was once the store.
Correct.
I
Correct.
noticed on one of the plans, the property line actually leaves part of that forward part out of the property. Is that correct?
Yep. See, you can see the property line here.
That's a little weird. Okay.
Yeah, we've run into that, particularly on Capitol Hill. A lot of those row houses will have bays, and they're across the property line into public space. Why they did it that way, I'm not sure, but that's the way they did
Well,
them.
the bays were illegal in DC until 1870.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and so this is a similar case in that this portion of the building is not on the property.
That's okay. That's just weird.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, first time I've encountered that. So back to the elevations. This is the proposed. Here you can see the new garage at the back of the house. And then you can see that the 3rd floor addition is located here. We wanted to separate the materials to, so you can better identify the original building and then the contrast at the top with materials, different material, siding. This is the front, technically the front of the building. This is going to be a new door, which leads to a stairway that will take you all the way to the 3rd level. So it's a private entrance just for the third floor unit. And then
Question
here's sort of
on the
a
pillars. Nope, I was figuring you'd have pillars a lot that match up at the top that would match what you have in that porch, but they're not.
pillars here.
Just no, off to the left-hand side where you have the little porch pillars. Do you see them? They have
Oh, up
little
here?
pediments and capitals. Those, yes, but they're very straight. I'm talking the ones on the 1st level, past the door that was the store. to the left. Yeah, that porch, see how they have capitals and pat it?
Yes, yes.
I figured they'd match, but they're not. They're more modern looking. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is also still very schematic in its development.
So it's not fixed yet.
Yeah, we will certainly be working on all the details with regards to the character of the columns up here, as well as how it either works with the existing architecture or contrasts with the existing architecture. But we'll work closely with Christian on that. And obviously, when it's fully developed and getting ready for permit, everybody will be able to see it.
Okay.
So that's in a nutshell, kind of the proposal here.
And,
So can I
yes.
go ahead?
No, I was just going to say the upper level, we could have done the upper level addition without a need for relief. And so just about everything but the conversion itself, the conversion relief is triggered by the connection. One of the reasons Christian needs the space for the connection too is putting in some significant EV equipment in there, which has required some extra space in the back. As he'll be primarily using the garage in the future, I think.
Can you show the plan of that? Because that kind of gets at the question I was going to ask. What makes this unique to where? Because you're not keeping the garage, you're tearing it down and rebuilding it. So what is unique about this that you need to keep that line where it is, as opposed to moving the garage back? Then that gets rid of all the exceptions except for making it 3 units, which seems pretty
Well,
straightforward. What is the need to keep that there? Because creating sort of a loophole to go from 60% to 70% allowed lot coverage for a larger garage and roof deck seems like a bigger ask.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
remember, it's just on that lowest level too. So there's 3 levels that are way under 60%, and it's just the first level. And that building does exist back there, and we're not putting a second story on that at all.
But you're rebuilding it anyway. You're tearing it down and building it larger, so you're not keeping it.
Well, part of the motivation for making the garage longer is because the EV that I have won't fit in there at its current size. It's much longer, and so I wanted to be able to fit the Rivian in there, and also not have to drag a charging cable across any lines or anything. But that would all be contained inside the garage.
I mean, a parking space is 16 feet long. I think you're at 30 feet long for that garage. That's
The Rivian, that's
twice
a
the
truck.
space.
The Rivian's a truck.
Correct.
Well, right.
a
A
big
parking
truck.
space though that fits all vehicles is 16 feet long.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the criteria for approval and a special exception on this is whether it's, unduly impacts light and air or privacy. And as opposed to like it's a big number, so it's going to 70%, but the test is still the same. And because it's limited to 1 story, we think it safely meets that criteria. And the neighbors are okay with it, and then just the one adjacent neighbor. And so he's trying to provide a means for, Christian staying in the house. And so one of the main reason for the bigger space is for his own personal needs, not just to get space for resale. So there is a practical reason behind it. Not that that's, the BZA is going to consider that. They're going to consider whether or not doing this connection substantially negatively impacts neighbors by unduly impacting their light and air and privacy. And we think, especially because of the way the elevation goes, it doesn't do that. So,
I mean, you're building a roof deck above their backyard that looks directly down on their backyard.
As well as on top of the garage. There's a roof deck going on the top of the garage too.
Right. The roof deck on top of the garage is the one I mean. That's the one I'm talking about.
I thought you meant the one on the actual roof.
No. The one on top of the garage. I mean, as far as privacy. Now you have a roof deck 10 feet above your
Yeah, well-
backyard.
Yeah, I don't think the neighbors have an issue with that. And there's a lot of tree coverage back there. It's not really much to look into in that backyard. And we could put a roof deck on there right now as a matter of right. And it's actually not part and parcel of this relief. We could do that with or without that relief.
Right. I understand that. And then as far as, I mean, you are now closing off. This is south of the other building. So while you're not blocking much light, you are blocking light by making that connection. There's currently a gap between the garage and the building.
Very small gap. Yeah. And part of the problem is there's a BRL all along the side street that restricts, and it's built too. And we don't want to change the frontage, even if he could. And so it was such a small space, it was virtually not usable and not all that convenient to have that small space in there. It kind of shoring it up kind of solves a bit of an inconvenient issue with that open space, actually. I mean, I could see, if it was 20 feet and we were going to 0, yeah, that would be.
I have a couple questions that relate to something I don't know. I haven't read this part of I'll admit I haven't read this part of the zoning bit yet. But the building in which I live has a green roof. Do any regulations govern when you do things like that about green roofs or solar panels or anything? Marshall, you might know that better than you know that better than I do.
But
And
there's
if
no
so, is
like
that
GAR
something being considered in
requirement
this?
for this.
Pardon?
I don't think our residential flat RF zones don't have any GAR
Okay.
green roof requirements or anything like that. No,
Okay.
not requirements.
We have a 20% pervious surface requirement, and it is possible to meet that. If you can't meet that, you can do a green roof, and that becomes pervious surface. But but we meet the pervious surface on the ground.
Okay. I was also thinking you could put some solar panels up there possibly too, which might. Also, what color are you planning that roof to use? White or something? Or is that not decided yet?
That isn't decided yet.
Warren, I have a question. Could you clarify which units have access to the different roof decks? So
This ground floor unit, which is these 2 floors, it's a 2-floor unit, will have access to the deck on the garage. And then just the upper level unit will have access to the roof.
Also,
So-
the basement unit would have access to the back roof
That's
deck
right.
too.
That's right. Because the door to the basement unit's here, and there is a stair up to the back deck.
okay, so the cellar unit, which is 2 bedrooms, they would have access to the roof deck above the garage.
Yes.
No. Oh, yeah, above the garage, yes.
And is that intended to be like, I mean, I can see there's some French doors, it seems, at the back of the middle unit, I would call it, that goes out to the deck. But I guess it's, okay. So the cellar unit can get up there if they need to. The middle unit has the garage, and the 3rd floor unit, they're the one and only that have access to the rooftop deck.
That's right.
And
Where are you
the-
planning for exterior HVAC units?
We're going to have to study that. Certainly, they would be on the roof and set back so that they're not easily visible. But we haven't even at this stage given a lot of thought to the exact locations of mechanical units.
Okay.
I would say it would be helpful because, sometimes people end up putting them, and I mean, new mini splits are so quiet. Sometimes they put them in areas that can be disturbing to the adjacent neighbors. So I think it would be helpful to kind of figure out where they're going to put those. Often in these BZA cases, people negotiate like, hey, we want these hidden further away from the neighbors.
Okay, it's a good point.
Actually, what I was just thinking along that line, Kevin, And I don't know if that would require yet another variance. But I noticed there's a wall on that roof for the balcony or for the terrace, or whatever you want to call it on the roof.
This one
No, not that one, the top one.
up here.
Yeah, what I was thinking is if you extended that wall sort of like a soundproofing wall around it, that might help what Kevin was just talking about with noise for the neighbors.
Yes, agreed, agreed.
But I don't know what the rules on that are. I'm not certain if it can go all the way over and things like that. But that might, I don't know what Kevin thinks or Marshall thinks, but that might help with that issue.
That's a good point. We'll definitely look into that.
That would take us over 70% lot occupancy, I think, if I understand what's going on, would be over 70, which would.
Well,
which
just
would then-
what I'm thinking of, there's a building that a block from me where they've done that essentially. They built a sound barrier above their penthouse. And I think it's meant to reduce the sound of the heat pumps. And I think it's supposed to reduce the sound of the condenser parts of it looks hideous from where I live, but from my windows, but I assume it's intended to reduce the sound for the people immediately to the south of them.
Are we a floor above Warren, the neighbor at this point too?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's a similar situation to the building I'm talking about, a block from me.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll take a look at that, and I'm sure Christian will talk to the neighbor.
But I
about
don't
it.
know if that would require variances or anything. It's just throwing that out as a possibility in conjunction with what Kevin was asking.
Sure, we'll take a look at at everything, at all possibilities with that.
So I want to keep things going here and be respectful of folks'
Yep.
time. Your hearing is not until May 10th.
May 10th, yeah.
So my guess is that means the ANC will have to vote on this no later than their April meeting. Because actually, wait, the second, they could theoretically, they could actually vote on this on the second Monday in May is the 8th. So, but my guess is, whenever you think you're ready to present but we'll send out, this video to the ANC commissioners. They can look at this. If there's any questions that came in here, comments that improve, I'm not levying any judgment. I mean, I will say, I did say earlier, I'm extremely happy to see there's one family size unit. There's nothing I hate worse when I see a family size house get split into a bunch of condos and none of them are family size. And, when you give us at least one family size unit that I think that's really great. So really appreciate getting that 3-bedroom in there. And I wish everyone could use the rooftop deck, but there's just some limitations to every design,
Sure. And this is Christian again, the owner. Just so you know, I intend to use one of the units for myself and the other unit for my aging parents. As they're getting older, my mom has dementia. She also actually lived in this neighborhood when she was a little girl, and rent the other unit out to help offset some of the costs. So I intend to still continue to live here in the neighborhood, and this is a multi-generational home for me.
Great, I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for your
Okay,
time. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I think is the screen share still on here? Okay,
guys.
so next on the agenda is a presentation for Union Market Parcel C2. This is a second stage PUD presentation following up on their first stage PUD. I think it was approved back in 2016 or 2017 under Zoning Commission Case 15-27. So whoever is going to present, please introduce yourself and take it away.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Todd Christensen. I am a development director with Carmel Partners. I'm joined tonight by Ronnie Gibbons and Elaine Tu, also with Carmel Partners, and Michael Nicholas with HKS, our architect. So what we want to do tonight is run through our PUD application, answer any questions that you guys have, and then ultimately we're looking for support from the ANC on our stage 2 PUD application. So what you are looking at right now is what we refer to as Market Terminal. Market Terminal is comprised of 6 parcels: A1, B, C1, A2, D, and C2. All of these were approved as a part of a consolidated and stage 1 first stage PUD application back in July of 2017. At the time of the application, the development team was coordinating very closely with this ANC 5D, as well as Office of Planning, on a series of substantial public benefits in exchange for the development density that was ultimately approved. Some of those benefits include 11% of the apartments being allocated towards inclusionary zoning. This was split 50-50 between 80% AMI and 50% AMI. Car sharing and bike sharing locations distributed around the site. A public plaza that connects Florida Avenue to Market Terminal and ultimately Union Market, which incorporates deaf space design principles. That includes loose furniture elements, curved steps that allow greater visibility for seeing impaired, as well as material variation between the sidewalks and street, as well as terraced seating. All of the buildings in this PUD are LEED Gold, and another benefit that we agreed to was funding to install new traffic signal at 4th Street and Morse. We also agreed to the creation of bike lanes in the alleyway shown here between our parcel and the Batley, which is just south of the page.
Okay.
So back in 2017, parcels A1, B, and C1 were approved as a part of the consolidated PUD, and parcels A2, D, and C2, which are on the right of this screen, were approved as a part of a stage 1 PUD. So the intention of the stage 1 PUD is to establish a framework for building density, use, and community benefits, while leaving the design elements undefined, which allows the design to lag behind in these multi-phase developments. So this PUD was approved back in 2017. Obviously, this is a very, very long-spanning project, and what we're going to be presenting to you today is the design for parcel C2. So parcels A1, B, and C1 were all completed in 2021. Parcels A2 and D are currently under construction, and parcel C2 is what we're going to be presenting to you today. We filed our second stage PUD application earlier this month. So this is kind of a bird's eye view of the Market Terminal development. The building that's not grayed out is our project, which Michael's going to walk you guys through the design on. It's a 232 unit rental apartment with 13 stories. It is divided into 12% studios, 58% 1 bedrooms, 21% 2 bedrooms, and 8% 3 bedrooms. It's going to have 26 inclusionary zoning units, which is 11%, and roughly 5,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor. One of the things that we're working through right now and still considering is potentially eliminating the retail and converting that to additional additional apartment units. We feel that there is a significant supply of retail in Union Market. So that's something that we are considering doing for this application. Another thing that we're considering is increasing the amount of parking that we're providing. Right now, we're providing roughly 100 parking spaces, and we're considering increasing that by about 50, given the demands that we're seeing at some other parcels that we own in this area. We own parcels A1 and B as well, and those are the names of those buildings is the gantry, and we've seen significant parking demand for that project. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michael Nicholas from HKS. He's going to walk us through the design of the project.
Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Todd did a nice job of introducing the project, its location, kind of where it is. We'll walk you through a series of architectural renderings that share with you the character of the building and the architecture, and showing it to you in its context. We'll also walk you through the floor plans for the building to help you understand how it's organized and where its front door is and the surrounding streetscape conditions. As Todd mentioned, it's a 13-story building. The building is consistent in height and at an overall scale with the surrounding buildings in the neighborhood, both in height and in terms of footprint. As we were developing the design of the building and thinking through its character, you give some thought to what's already in the neighborhood and how to create, something special within the neighborhood. The buildings that surround this building, they all vary in character, but I would kind of offer that they're all somewhat hard-edged buildings that, while they're all beautiful, have a certain continuity in their character. And I happen to be an architect who thinks that great neighborhoods are made through buildings that vary in their character and add a lot of sort of eclectic character to a neighborhood. I think there's an urban vibrancy that comes from that. So given that, what we've proposed for this building is a character that's driven by a couple of things: a modern, kind of fresh building within the context of a historic neighborhood, to actually express that as a contrast, and then lean on an approach to designing a building that emphasizes health and wellness. So when you think about how that might apply to this kind of building, the big drivers that come to mind for us are access to daylight. So this is a fairly glass-skinned building. It's not a building, comprised of smaller punched windows. So getting a lot of natural light into the units is important. That that each apartment have operable windows to let fresh air into the building. That not every single unit, but that an unusually high proportion of the units have access to balconies for natural light, access to more fresh air, and then being able to step out of your apartment to have a small amount of private outdoor space. So when you think about both the character of the neighborhood and the thinking that we brought related to health and wellness, those are really the two of the bigger drivers for the design of the building. What sets it apart and makes it special within the neighborhood and for the residents who live here. So this is a view looking at the I guess you would say the front of the building in perspective. To the right, the building fronts onto 3rd Street. The side of the building to the left on the perspective is a street called Neal Place. So the building sits on that corner with 2 street fronting sides, a main entrance lobby off of 3rd Street, the longer face of the building. So
Michael, this historically was going to be 3rd Street. It's actually Union Place now.
Union
Place.
Place. Yeah, thank
Union
you for
Place
that.
and Neal Place.
Right. Thank you for that.
So that's actually C2, correct?
Yes, we're looking
This
at
is the C2 building. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah. let's move through a few of the different perspective views. We have a series of views that we're sharing that are somewhat similar in their character and their, but just intended to show you the building from a few different vantage points. Again, you're looking kind of at the corner, looking down Union Place a little bit more directly. You can see again the two street sides of the building have a very glassy, crisp, modern character defined by the balcony patterns across the facade. Let's keep going, Todd. Yeah. So again, a few more views of the building. The south end of the building is kind of at a zero lot line. Doesn't really have street frontage. You're seeing a little bit of the side of the building there between, I guess, what you would call C2 and C1. You're looking back up the street. Again, this is the longer elevation of the building, faces Union Place, and that's where, like, the front door, that's the front of the project, its address. So go ahead,
C1
Todd.
is already built and A1 are already built, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, this
You.
building is really the last one in the line from that bigger stage 1 PUD. This is yet another view of the building, kind of showing it to you from several different vantage points. You can see the ground floor of the building. This is sort of the side of the building. A lot that you see along Neal Place as you were walking from 4th Street, sort of west toward our building. You're seeing that corner of the building. Neal is a fairly narrow street with buildings tight along its edges. It's got kind of a nice intimate character to it, given that street width. One thing that we've done for our building is to actually, once you get above the ground floor of the building, set the building back 5 feet to give the street a little bit more breathing room and character. And then that allows us to have balconies along that face of the building without having to talk about balconies that are some form of, element that projects into the street. So the face of the balcony is really kind of the face of the property line for the project. So just keep going, Todd. Again, another view of the building. You're seeing the ground floor a little bit more closely here. The ground floor is primarily lobby and amenity program for the building. So it's really, from the building's perspective, the social center for the building. The majority of the amenity program would be on a kind of a social floor with storefront along its length. The lobby of the building would be along this face as well. The building does effectively come out to the property line with street trees along the 2 street-facing sides of the project. Now, just to walk you briefly through the floor plans of the building, this is the ground floor of the building. I mentioned the lobby and the amenity program for the building, kind of creating a social center for the building, or that larger pink space in the middle of the plan. The retail that Todd was referring to, that might be either retail or more ground floor units, are along the right edge of the plan along Neal Place. The building has an alley frontage along the bottom of the plan here. So as you might imagine, that's where service is for the building, for move in and move out and trash and things like that. That's also where the ramping down to parking occurs, kind of on that lower left portion of the plan. This is the ground floor again, really just showing you more emphasis, illustrating the perimeter streetscape of the building with street trees and sidewalks. As we move up into the building, you see a typical floor plan with the building is really a floor plan with units that wrap around the entire project, a double loaded corridor, elevatoring and stairs that kind of nest into kind of inside corners of the building. Fairly straightforward plan layout. As you move up the building, you see at the roof level, like a lot of residential buildings in the district, the roof of the building is got a combination of exterior amenity program, a pool, indoor amenity space, and then the majority of the mechanical equipment elements for the building are at this top end of the building as well. Another look at that same rooftop with a little bit more emphasis on illustrating green roof, the pool, amenity spaces, hardscape, landscape, and then some of the interior spaces.
Am I correct in assuming that as it goes up, it's retreating away from the alley, or am I misreading that?
Well, the ground floor of the building fronts onto the alley kind of at the lot line. And then once you're up at the residential floors, the floor plate does step in a bit and forms that C-shaped plan that, works better dimensionally for, units and.
Then I was reading it correctly.
Yeah,
Thank
it does
you.
step back a little. Yeah, right. In this three-dimensional view, you can kind of get the bigger picture here, the things that are happening on the roof, the facades of the building and their character, how the building kind of fits aesthetically into the neighborhood, both in terms of facade character and scale. It's actually one of the smaller buildings to be introduced into the neighborhood compared to some of the surrounding buildings in terms of floor plate and overall size and bulk. There is a good amount of variety from small to medium to large, which I think makes for a better neighborhood. But
wish you had led with this slide. I spent the longest time trying to figure out where's this building. Over here in Google Maps,
Right.
big maps, trying to figure out where the
no, I'm
building was.
sorry. Yeah, right. We should have.
Well, I figured that out already, Kevin. That's why I was
Yeah,
asking the
okay.
questions about.
I'm just like, where are they in relation to Stellina Pizza? And
Right.
Got a block.
So
Thank
There you go.
thank you for.
El
thank you.
Cielo is around the corner.
Yeah.
On Neil.
So you can kind of see, just to sort of introduce the project as our last part of the presentation, you can see New York Avenue along the top of this slide, Florida Avenue kind of along the bottom of the slide, where Todd drew that rectangular shape as our site. Neil Place kind of comes across one edge of the site, and then that upper corner of our building forms the corner at the sort of the intersection of the two streets. So does that help? I apologize for maybe not making that more clear in the beginning.
And the building's going up next to the gantry now, correct? At least that's what it looks like on the Google map I'm looking at.
Yeah, so going back to the master plan here, the gantry are these, can you guys see my cursor?
Yep.
Okay, so these two are the gantry. This
Oh,
is
they're both gantry. Okay.
Yeah, this is gantry A1 and B. This is Signal House, which is C1. And then this
finished.
These are all complete. Everything here is done. These two properties are currently under construction. This is the Grosvenor property, and this is another one of our properties, which we call Theory. And right now, this is an open
Grassy area from the look of it.
grassy area. Yes,
Okay. The path going through it.
correct.
Right.
What is that curving green thing around? That's wrapping around the outer edge, just below where it says consolidated PUD first stage PUD.
So there is a old railroad easement that actually wraps our site. Yeah.
Okay.
You can't really tell when you go over there, but there is an old train track.
So the used store self-storage is essentially sitting on it.
Potentially. Yes.
Because if you follow that along New York Avenue, the railway goes right behind the gantry, as it shows there.
Right.
So the railroad follows in parallel to the gantry.
Right, and it goes up under New York Avenue.
Yes,
You
there's
can
a
see
small,
the tracks right up there at the very top. Okay.
Yeah. The page doesn't go quite far enough, but there is a small, maybe this shows it. So there is a small tunnel that goes underneath New York Avenue at the very, very tip of our site. That's
Oh, I
abandoned.
see that. I never realized that was a tunnel. Yeah, that building right on the edge That's just above where that yellow triangle thing is, right below where it says 50. That's the storage place.
I believe that's actually outside of the railway
Okay.
path.
I'm just looking at Google Map and I'm telling you that building matches what Google's showing.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that.
Could you quickly, now that we have a better sense of the building, could you tell me again what you were, I guess, reconsidering the retail on the first floor? What were you thinking on the first floor now? I thought you said it's retail now, and I think there is about 9,000 square feet of retail. But were you or 4,000, I guess. Were you reconsidering that? Is that what you said earlier?
Yeah, so we are considering, we all know that there's a lot of retail in Union Market. We have roughly 50,000 square feet of retail between our other projects, and we've been working on leasing up that retail as quickly as we can. But just given the amount of retail in Union Market, it's challenging, and I think we've had some discussions about maybe a better use for this, and for this space would be, instead of putting retail here, putting additional units. I think that we've all seen the projects that have retail that stays vacant for years and years and years, and nobody likes that. That's not good for the neighborhood, and not good for the project. So it's something that we're considering.
Hey, Todd, I have a question regarding that, and it's kind of a generic question. For instance, like there's I don't know what the building is called right now, like Atlas Heights or something. Atlas was Atlas Flats. When we see buildings get built,
Union Heights.
Union Heights is yeah. So when we see a building like this that goes up and they have ground floor retail and it literally stays vacant for more than 5 years, it's always I've always been curious, why don't they just lower the rate like extremely low and just rent it out to a nonprofit or do something? Like, how is it in any way profitable to have a site sit absolutely unused? Is there some tax reason? I mean, again, I'm just explain to me, because people ask me this question all the time and I don't really answer.
It's a very good question. I don't know if I am the most qualified person to answer, but I can give you some color into why that might occur. Getting a retail tenant is a very, very intensive process. It requires significant capital on behalf of the person that is going to be taking the space, as well as the property owner. So there are it's not as simple as lowering the rent and finding anybody who will take it, because you're making a capital investment when you have a retailer come in. And retail is a very very risky endeavor. Everybody knows this, the statistics about the failure rate of retailers. So a lot of times you'll get situations where retail will stay vacant because it's very, very costly and very risky, and sometimes that it makes sense to just leave it vacant and sell the building with vacant retail for the next owner to sort of take that and do with it what they want.
And Todd, does that need to be in the PUD, or is that something you can easily change later on? The retail on the ground floor.
Yeah, so this will have to be in the PUD. This is a fairly fresh idea that we're sort of bouncing around. We haven't had, I think our next step is that we want to kind of bring this up with Office of Planning and get their feedback. We've been working with HKS on some exhibits to present this to them. We don't want to do something that that either the ANC or Office of Planning is not going to be on board with. So I think we have some homework to do on our end before we formally make that commitment, but yes, it would be something that would ultimately be in the PUD if we go that direction.
Yeah, and I
Yeah, and
recognize
I
the challenge with retail. I think if you were to change to units, my personal comment would be, I've seen a lot of ground floor units around the city, especially like Navy Yard area. The streetscape might be modified a little bit to accommodate that.
Yeah, that's a really good comment. That's exactly what we're studying with HKS.
Yeah, and I think another thought would be, considering what the ground floor of the neighboring buildings are, because I brought it up not because I think it should remain retail, but if it's not retail, really thinking about what it is, because I agree with you. There is no urgent need for additional retail in Union Market, but I think whether it's something that not a amenity per se for the neighborhood, but it could be a development type amenity. You own the 6 buildings, I can't remember, around it, whether that's a sort of a development amenity, a neighborhood amenity, or I mean, if it is units, then that works too. But I would put some thought into what that is, because as far as retail, it is a little bit farther away from the loading. It's not optimal loading or retail anyway. So I think there are probably good uses for it beyond retail.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good feedback. Thank you.
There is one thing, I know the gantry, its upper, I guess you might say, community space is frequently used for arts related stuff, because I've been to things there. That would be that top roof area. That might be also something that's could be done with something like that space. It's just an idea.
Okay.
But
we can definitely take that into consideration. I think if you're attending arts, arts exhibits or arts activities at the gantry, it's probably being organized by our asset management team.
that may be. I just go as guest. It's a friend of mine who seems to run the stuff, but he doesn't work there. He's one of the arts organization types. So,
Okay.
Todd, could you summarize the total number of units? Do you have a table in this presentation that just summarizes the number of studios, 1, 2, 3 bedrooms?
Yeah, so I don't have that table in this presentation, but I'm happy to, I will send all of you guys our PUD submission after, well, it's a little late. I'll send it to you guys tomorrow. And that breaks down, there's tables that go into the unit mix and all that good information. But just to re-summarize, we have 232 units as drawn before you here, 12% studios, 58% 1 bedrooms, 21% 2 bedrooms, and 8% 3 bedrooms.
and the 3 bedrooms, if I remember from the one floor plan at least, there were 2 to a floor, 13 floors that mean 26 units. If I misread, unless I misread this.
It's a little bit less than 26 units, I believe. Michael, I don't know if you know that offhand. I think it's maybe 22, but that's close to what we've got.
And do you have square footage, like average square footage for like the one, like how many square foot is your is the average 2 bedroom?
So the average 2 bedroom, Michael, do you know that off the top of your head? I don't have
well,
that.
it's a little bit of a range. A 2 bedroom unit is oftentimes around 1,000 square feet plus or minus. It varies. That we have located sort of like you can just visually sort of see the outside corners of the plans tend to be where we locate the larger units, so you can see those light blue units on the upper left corner and upper right corner. You can see on the bottom corners facing the alley the larger units there, and then we tend to put studios and 1 bedroom units in sort of an inline condition, the purplier and yellower units. You can see there's sort of a organizational strategy to all of that. So like the two top units, upper left and upper right, are the biggest units in the plan. Those are the 3-bedroom units. So there's 2 per floor. On a typical floor, at least, right?
Michael, I'm curious what the facade materials are. It was just a little bit hard for me to tell from the rendering.
Right. I mean, the primary, this is it's a very glassy building. The 2 street-facing facades of the building that you see here are a very high percentage of glass. So you'd see floor-to-ceiling glass. The living rooms and bedrooms, for that matter, are mostly all glass. If you look closer, you can see some light grayish panels that kind of work their way up the facade a little bit here and there. So, like on a percentage basis, the skin on these 2 street-facing sides is like, I don't know, 80 to 90% glass. And
is that a window wall system?
It would be, a window wall system, exactly.
And then where we see the gray panels that you're talking about, is that those are opaque, I'm guessing?
Yeah, so those would be opaque, some sort of metal panel system that is integrated into the window wall system itself.
Okay.
And you can see and sort of along with that. So it's the very glassy sort of skin that you see that is this sort of fresh, modern look that is allowing a lot of natural light into the units. And that with this whole notion of balconies, especially on a post-COVID basis, a little bit of outdoor airspace is more important than ever. And so we've taken that idea and used that to kind of give the building its character, with balconies sort of patterned across the facade in a unique way. And it's really kind of what gives the building its character.
It reminds me somewhat of several of the buildings at City Center now.
I mean, there are a couple of different residential buildings there. There are rental buildings and condo buildings. They are very modern, glassy buildings. There are some of the buildings, depends on which one you're looking at. But I think this would be, as architects, we're always looking to do, just either because we like this or we think it's important to our client, always trying to introduce a building that's somewhat fresh to the neighborhood or to the city. And, with the amount of residential development that DC has seen over the years, that's an increasingly sort of tricky thing to achieve. But I think with the glassiness of the building here, when you look at what else is in this neighborhood, especially if you want to be unique to the neighborhood, and it, I think, makes the neighborhood stronger, and I think makes the product itself stronger. Trying to come up with a character that's unique to the neighborhood is, a priority for us. So.
Just to add to that, I think, another distinguishing element of this building design is the number of balconies that really kind of define, the facade here. If you walk around Union Market, you don't really see that. So this is pretty unique for the neighborhood. Or if you do see the balconies, they're sort of inset into the building as opposed to projecting out. So, we're pretty happy with the work that HKS did here, and we're excited about this design.
This may sound like an odd question, but from what was said earlier, they're about 5 feet wide, correct? Not length, but the width from the wall to the edge of the balcony.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, that's a fairly.
So that should be sufficient for a small table and a couple chairs or something like that, is what I'm thinking.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of cost that goes into introducing the balconies. So having a balcony that's actually usable sort of dimensionally for a table and chair, and also is appropriate for handicap accessibility, is, I think, 5 feet is really kind of the minimum you want to do. Every once in a while you see slightly bigger dimension than that, but in this case, I mean, we've got 5-foot balconies.
Thank you. That's what
Yeah.
when you had said, that's what I'd sort of calculated in my head. I just wanted to get my eye, figure out if I was correct.
Yeah.
If you look close, I mean, the length of the balconies kind of parallel to the facade varies. And it has to do with just creating this interesting varied pattern of balconies on the facade. So it's not just a uniform stack of balconies that are somewhat more utilitarianly defined. We're trying to give the building a little bit of architectural character. So we're using the length of the balcony as one of the moves that gives the building a little bit of a more looser look. So not everything stacks and so quite so uniform.
And since this is a rental, I guess I would assume that the interior roller shades just come standard with these units as a part of the
Yes.
architecture.
Yeah.
And Michael, I'm going to quickly share my screen because I think it's the same view as what you're showing, but not the building.
Sure.
And I just want to, so for people at home watching. So this is Google Street View here.
Yeah, that's nice that there's a walk through it, little park
Right.
thing right now.
So this, I believe you were just kind of showing that this is the view. And
Yeah.
let me just walk down. I have a question for you. So like this, how does your building interface with this? Does it join here? Is this path? I mean,
Right.
what's the, just curious how this works here with this. By the way, I don't know who designed this, and this is one of the most coolest things I love every time I walk around here. I just love looking up and seeing the bumblebees on the other side. It's just so amazing.
Yeah, that is a cool building. The murals are really, the ceiling murals are really cool.
I
So,
can't take credit for it. Sorry. You were asking how does our building sit along this edge?
Yes.
And our ground floor really abuts this wall, like where that
Got it.
wall is right there. That's the property line for
Got it.
the two parcels. So our ground floor abuts that ground floor. And then our building above kind of moves up from that fairly close to the property line, actually. So we're fortunate that
does that
building
mean-
sets back and there's enough light and air for the units that face that's south to the right.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
that walkway is going to go away, is what you're saying. If I'm
Right,
understanding.
Right.
Will the decks, will you have something on your building that aligns with that deck so they could theoretically be opened in some way? The one on the where it's going to be next to it, not on this side, the other side. Next to the I think you said it's called the signal. See how you
Mhm.
have that so there's a railing that goes around.
That edge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a balcony of some form.
Like, are they sharing some of that amenity space or something? At the moment, there really isn't any plans to try to have spaces shared between the two buildings, if that's what you're asking.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, right.
So Signal House is an office building. We don't own that. They would.
Oh, okay.
They would be completely separate.
Gotcha. I was asking that because one of the things they've run into in Tyson's is because each building was developed so individually, they don't align. And so when they're trying to turn it into more of a city, they're running into all sorts of trouble with that. So the result is what they're ending up doing is, in many cases, leveling buildings and rebuilding.
Right.
And that is something personally I think should try to avoid that if possible.
Right.
And just
But
for the
that's-
folks at home,
That's
this
me.
is-
Hmm?
and just for the folks at home, that's Union Market down here.
Yep.
This is Neil Place here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll let you. We should wrap up soon, but I'll let you finish off your presentation. I just kind of feel it's handy to use
Yeah.
Google Street View, folks, to get context where the site's
Yeah.
going to be.
No,
Yeah.
that was very helpful. Thank you. I mean, Todd, unless you have more to present, I think we really kind of we've given you what we hope is a good overview of what we're proposing. If you do have more questions, we'd certainly be happy to entertain them, but we don't have more to present.
I have one quick question. I would always ask, how much parking beneath the structure?
We currently have 95 spaces, but that was another area that we are exploring expanding upon. So I mentioned earlier that we have had, very high demand for parking at the gantry, and we're doing studies to determine if we want to expand that to 150 roughly parking spaces.
And is that all tenant parking or is that public parking as well?
It would be dependent on whether or not the retail remains as retail, but right now the plan is that it would be all tenant parking for residents. Well, thank you guys. We really appreciate your time tonight. Hopefully you guys are in support or will provide support for the project as we develop it further. I'm sure there will be other presentations. So, glad to meet everybody in this forum, and thank you very much.
Cheers. I really appreciate you coming to present. Does anyone else any questions? Well, I thank everybody for your patience, and thank you for the presentations. Hopefully the commissioners find this helpful. Anyway, hope everybody have a good evening, and I'll probably see you all next month. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.